Hello everybody, happy Memorial Day Monday. We've got a really special edition of Science Storytime today because I was thinking there's a lot of science in all of our armed forces, the Army, the Navy, and all of the other units that I have to admit I am having a little brain buffer moment on all of them. But they're all really, really important. They help to protect our freedoms. And Memorial Day is all about honoring those people who have lost their lives doing so. So we've got two stories that we're going to do today, one experiment, and we're going to talk about a really awesome list that the Army put together about really cool technologies that have been updated for the purposes of the armed forces. So the first book that we're going to read today is called John, Paul, George, and Ben. And these are some of our founding fathers. This book kind of makes fun of the fact that the Beatles have a very similar name. They're John, Paul, George, and Ringo. So these are our founding fathers, another Fab Four group. So if you are here and you're watching, make sure that you comment so that I know that it's working. Looks like we've got some viewers on Instagram. Hello, happy Memorial Day. And if you're here on Facebook, let me know that you can see everything. So without further ado, let's get started with our first book. John, Paul, George, and Ben by Lane Smith. Once there were 4 lads, John, Paul, George, and Ben. Make that 5 lads. There was also independent Tom, always off, doing his own thing. Let's see if I can move these a little bit closer so that we've got a similar image. There we go. Oh, and you can see right in the corner, there's John running away. Very independent. John was a bold lad. At the start of every school year, the students were asked to write their names on the chalkboard, and every year it was the same story. John, his teacher would say, you have lovely penmanship. John, your confidence is refreshing. But John, come on, we don't need to read it from space. There's John Hancock, known for his giant signature on the Declaration of Independence. And underneath some of the other names that we see, we've got the ones that I can read at least. Sherman, William, Josiah, Matthew, Oliver, Cooper. So these must be all of John's classmates. And these are all of our founding fathers when they're little. Paul was a noisy lad. Before fun was even invented, people joined bell-ringing clubs. As a member at Boston's Old North Church, Paul spent hours practicing in the belfry tower. Over time, that bell ringing took a toll on young Paul. All day, his head was filled with loud bings and bongs. He had to practically scream just to hear himself talk. Now, that's fine around the belfry, but not at work. Extra large underwear. Sure, we have some. Let's see. Large, large, extra large. Here they are. Great big extra large underwear. Paul was like a bullhorn in a china shop. Your wig, yes, it's coming, and your polka dot shirts are coming, and the pink breeches are coming. Uh-oh. It took many years and a midnight ride for people to finally appreciate his special talent. The redcoats are coming! The redcoats are coming! Everyone, except the big underwear lady, that is, she was still mad. George was an honest lad. One day he took his shiny new hatchet and chopped down his family's cherry tree. When his father discovered the tree, he asked, "Son, do you know who killed this beautiful little cherry tree?" "I cannot tell a lie," answered George. "'Twas I who chopped down this cherry tree." "Then run to my arms, dearest boy," cried his father, "for you have paid me for it 1,000-fold with your honesty." "Really?" said George. "In that case..." "When I tell you I've taken out the apple orchard, leveled the barn, and made kindling of your carriage, you'll be a wealthy, wealthy man." Ben was a clever lad. Not only did he have a saying for every situation, he generously shared them with anyone, anywhere, at any time. Fish and visitors stink after 3 days. And Ben Franklin used to be my boss. He considered it his duty to provide frequent and free advice. "The sleeping fox catches no poultry. Those who in quarrels interpose must often wipe a bloody nose." And a lot of these are kind of old-fashioned sayings, and even I'm not sure what they all mean. "If your head is wax, don't walk into the sun. 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead." The townsfolk were so taken by his generosity, they came up with a saying, especially for Ben. "Please shut your big yap!" That's not very nice, but it sounds like Ben Franklin was a little bit of a know-it-all. "I like it," said Ben. "Short and to the point. Work a fox or turkey in there, and I think you've got something." Tom was an independent lad. One day, his teacher, Mr. Douglas, asked the class to make birdhouses by gluing macaroni to ye old balsa wood. Tom happily ignored him and used traditional building materials in a neoclassical design. When the class made a palm tree, Tom took one look and said, "Not on your life," and then quickly left. So there's him making a real house when all the other kids are just making little craft houses. And then we had the palm tree with all of the students' palms or handprints on them. So not on your life, then quickly left to sketch his own tree. "Young Thomas," fumed Teacher Douglas, "would you mind explaining to the class why you insist on working so independently?" "Certainly," said Tom. "In fact, I've taken the liberty to list the very reasons." "Fear not, sir, I've used small words for the benefit of the dullards." Dullards is a fancy word for not very smart people. Tom learned the power of his words that day. Mr. Douglas told him to pursue all the life, liberty, and happiness that he wanted. Independently, wait a second, where were we? Oh, yeah. Mr. Douglas told him to pursue all the life, liberty, and happiness he wanted. Independently in the corner, the other students pursued lunch. And the rest, as they say, is history. Say, you want a revolution? Well, John, Paul, George, Ben, and Tom sure did. In April of 1775, they got one. The Redcoats were coming. In fact, King George III's army was marching to Lexington and Concord to arrest John and the other Sons of Liberty. And then this page is going to tell us what really happened. So that was just a made-up story about the Founding Fathers when they were little. Let's see what it really has to say. Fortunately, Paul Revere was a noisy man. After his midnight ride, every Minuteman, woman, and child knew who was coming and what they'd be wearing. It was the start of the Revolutionary War. And this is a picture of Paul Revere. Kind of looks like Jack Black. The Americans needed to formally state their separation from the king. Who better than Thomas Jefferson, an independent man, to write the Declaration of Independence? And this is Thomas Jefferson. You might recognize him from our $5 bill, or not $5, I'm sorry, from our nickel. And I think our $10 bill too. Simply signing such a document was treasonous and dangerous. Ben Franklin, a clever man, said it best. We must all hang together, he quipped, or assuredly we shall all hang separately. And there's my old boss, Ben Franklin. Always known to be wise, but a little bit of a weirdo. We kind of like weirdos, though. One might think twice about signing his name, but not John Hancock, a bold man. He was the first to scribble his autograph. And man, just look at the size of that John Hancock. That's him right at the top of the page there. The war was won thanks to General Washington. Everyone thought he would make a great king for the United States of America. But George Washington was an honest man. The last thing we need is another King George, he said. President George, however, that has a nice ring to it. And there's George Washington. You can find him on a quarter or $1 bill. Ye olde epilogue. George didn't live in the White House like all the other presidents. He was asked to live in New York City, where there wasn't so many trees. And then here we're going to debunk some historical myths. Let's see. Taking liberties, wherein we set the record straight with ye old true or false section. John had the biggest signature on the Declaration of Independence. That was true. It was so big he reportedly bragged that the king could read it without his glasses. When John was a boy, his signature was always the biggest one on the chalkboard. False. Classroom chalkboards weren't invented until a few years later. The Sons of Liberty was a secret society. The Patriotic Club was formed after King George III imposed the stamp tax on the American colonists in 1765, and John Hancock was one of the leaders. And the Stamp Act, I believe, is when the Great Boston Tea Party happened. So I'm just going to pick and choose maybe 2 or 3 more because there are a lot here. The phrase ye old gets awfully old after a while. That is true. Tom's teacher was named Mr. Douglas. That was also true. George was the only president to serve in New York, not in the White House, because New York has fewer trees for him to level. That is false. We cannot tell a lie. The real reason was because the White House wasn't completed until the second president's term. And every kid should enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's true, as long as your teacher says it's okay. The end. John, Paul, George, and Ben. And on the very back, it's got a few of the highlights from the book. Cool. So that was our first story. Our first story was about the old times and how the country was created, as well as the very beginning of the armed forces. So now we're going to jump ahead to a little more modern times. This is a story about a little girl whose father had to go to war. So let's get that started now. So the second book is called The Year of the Jungle by Suzanne Collins, Memories from the Home Front. And Suzanne Collins was just a little girl when the Vietnam War started back in the 60s. So this is her book to help other families who have people that are abroad and across over the seas. Year of the Jungle by Suzanne Collins. My dad reads me poems by a man named Ogden Nash. My favorite is about a dragon named Custard. Even though he always feels afraid, he is really the bravest of all, and that's what makes him special. We're all something special. Rascal is the cat. Oops. Oh yes, Rascal's the cat, Kathy's the oldest, I'm the youngest, Drew's the boy, and Joni's the only one with brown eyes like my dad. Melted chocolate. My dad has to go to something called war. It's in a place called Vietnam. Where is Vietnam? He will be gone a year. How long is a year? I don't know what anyone's talking about. Then someone says he'll be in the jungle. My favorite cartoon character lives in a jungle. He has an elephant and an ape for friends, and he bangs into trees a lot. Rascal and I want to go to Vietnam too. You can fly anywhere in your dreams. We keep an eye on my mom just in case she's thinking about going to the jungle too, but she's always at home with us. Then our first postcards come. Kathy reads mine to me because it's in cursive. It says, Dear Susie, this is a picture of a deer. Don't let Rascal see it. He might think it's a tiger and want to eat it. Love, Dad. A few days later, first grade begins. I have a new lunchbox with its own thermos and a friend named Beth. On Sundays, my dad always read me the comics. Drew does it now, since he is the man of the house. More postcards come from my dad. Sometimes grown-ups ask what he does. When I tell him he's in Vietnam, they act funny, sad or worried or angry. For Halloween, my mom makes me a snow leopard costume. One of those worried ladies says, Your dad will be just fine, and gives me way too much extra candy. I start to feel worried too. Beth and I trace our hands and make Thanksgiving turkeys. Has it been a year yet? I get a postcard of a man fishing in Vietnam. Behind him, I can see the edge of the jungle. It looks different from my dreams. Dear Susie, how do you like first grade? Do you have a lot of homework? I'll bet you don't have a lot of time to tease the cat. Love, Dad. XX. That means hugs. Mom and Drew get a tree. Rascal and I rearrange the manger several times a day. He likes to knock over the sheep with his paw. If I knock one more over, it annoys him. Does that count as teasing? My dad sends me a beautiful Vietnamese doll and a fancy silk card with Mary and angels and the baby Jesus on the front. Inside it reads, Merry Christmas, little Sue. Don't feed Rascal too much turkey. I wish I could be there to watch you open your presents, your loving father. My mom gets a pretty silk card too, but hers has something stamped on the back, a picture of a soldier with a bugle and a gun. He's in the jungle. Under him are the words, Souvenir of Vietnam. It's snowing and I get a birthday card. My birthday isn't until summer. The card should be for Joni. My mom says that my dad's busy and just got a little confused. The jungle must be a very confusing place for him to make such a serious mistake. Candy hearts, no postcards. Shamrocks, no postcards. Colored eggs, no postcards. A year goes on and on. Finally, some postcards show up. I wanted one of the jungle. Instead, I get a city called Saigon. Dear little Sue, how do you like being in first grade? Study hard, and when you're home, don't bother Rascal too much. Pray for me. Love, Dad. Pray for me? In May, I make my first communion, and I pray very hard for my dad to come home. He doesn't. I fix Rascal a plate of crayons, but as usual, he won't eat them. From the TV, I hear the words Vietnam, and I look up. Soldiers lie on the ground, and some of them aren't moving. My mom runs across the living room and turns off the TV. It's okay. Your dad is okay, she says. I don't say anything. Later, I hide in the closet and cry. Wow, we always think of our soldiers as doing all the really hard work, which they certainly do, but it seems like their family has a lot of hard work to do at home by themselves as well. Sometimes it's hard to remember what my dad looks like. I stare into Joni's melted chocolate brown eyes to try and find him. The postcards stop coming. I dig out a really old one of a kitten and pretend that it's new. Then, suddenly, my dad's home. He looks a little different, tired and thin, and his skin has turned the color of pancake syrup. He gives me a bracelet with tiny bells that really ring. He gives Rascal a pat. Rascal and I stand in the doorway watching him. He stares into space. He is here, but not here. He is back in the jungle. I need to tell him that I know about the jungle, about the things that happen there. The words are hard to get a hold of. Rascal didn't think that you were coming back, I said finally. My dad sees us and says, You tell him that most people come back, and I'm home now. It's true, he is home now. Some things have changed, but some things will always be the same. My dad reads me poems by a man named Ogden Nash. My favorite is about a dragon named Custard. Even though he always feels afraid, he is really the bravest of all, and that is what makes him so special. Here is the author, Suzanne Collins, in 1968, the year her father was deployed in Vietnam. The end. Wow, I learned a little bit about what it might be like to be in a family with a deployed person in the armed forces. My grandpa was in the Navy, and they had a Memorial Day parade where they all drove past his house and honked their horns. There were fire trucks and police cars and Boy Scouts, and everyone just wanted to wave to him and thank him for his service. So if on your socially distant walks today, you see anyone in any kind of uniform or that you know served, make sure you thank them for their service. So now I want to show you how to make a straw rocket. We're going to make a patriotic craft and experiment today in honor of our troops. So these rockets, they have a lot of different purposes in the field. Sometimes they'll set off a rocket so that all their friends know where they are, maybe if they're lost. So we're going to make a rocket that we can send up and we'll decorate it too. All you need is a straw, and I've got a reusable metal straw, but you can use anything. You'll need some paper. Of course, you'll need some markers or crayons or something to decorate with, some scissors, and some Scotch tape. So, to do first is you want to cut a small piece. I cut a piece about this big, so that when I fold it in half and fold it in half again, there's a little pocket that I can put the straw inside. So I'm going to tape the corners, and the idea here is that we're going to use our breath in order to get our rocket going. The air from our breath is going to go into the straw, and then it's going to push against this little piece of paper. So I folded up my little piece here. Now I'm going to put it into one of the folds, just like this. I don't want to put it directly into the middle fold because there's still some air that can escape. So I'm going to put it into the side fold to make sure. Okay, so this is really, really simple. This is the first step, and I think to decorate it, I'm going to make some stars with blue. I'll make some stars with red. There we go. Now I think we're ready. So my straw is curved a little bit. So I'm going to let the curved part go up, and that's where I'm going to put my rocket, right here on the curved part. Now all I have to do is blow into the straw, and let's see what happens. Oh man, that didn't go very far. Let's see if we try it the other way, if that will work a little bit better. So what is happening, I'm using my scientific method to investigate, and it looks like there's some air that's escaping. So I'm going to take my stapler, and I'm going to staple the very top and the side. And then I'm going to add a little bit of tape on the corner. And I'm just looking to see where the air could possibly escape from. And that's where I'm putting it. We don't want any of the air to escape our rocket. Otherwise, it won't be able to be propelled as easy as it could. So here we go. Let's try this. There we go. That worked really well. So if it doesn't work at first, take a step back, see what you think might be going wrong, where can you cover things up, and then try it again. See if you can shoot it really, really far. How can you shoot it a really, really short distance? Okay, and for the last part of today's stream, I wanted to share you a really cool list that Eureka Alert with AAAS created. This was actually from last year. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll also share the link below so that you and your family can explore some of the really cool things that the Army has done. Well, actually, it's mostly just text, so I'll just read it to you. Okay, so they count down backwards from 10, the coolest pieces of technology and engineering advances that were made. Number 10, artificial muscles made from plastic. Future Army robots will be the strongest in the world. And if visionary researchers have their way, robots could be armed with artificial muscles made from plastic. That's really cool. So the College of Engineering studied how plastic fibers respond when they're twisted and coiled. Wow, that's really cool. This is something called biomimicry. Can you say that with me? Biomimicry. Bio means alive, and mimicry means to copy. So when we talk about biomimicry, we're copying something from real life. So scientists are looking on how our muscles work to see if they can make their robots even better. Number 9, monitoring soldier health and performance with biorecognition receptors. That sounds really fancy. Biorecognition sensors. Well, we just learned that bio means life. So we got that part. Recognition means something that we can recognize or that we can observe. And a receptor is something that collects something else. Now, that is all a fancy word to say for something similar to this, a smartwatch. So they can see how soldiers are feeling, their heart rate, their blood pressure, based on something like this, a sensor that can keep track of their body data so that all of the nurses and doctors in the Army can help to keep them healthy. Number 8, a water-based fireproof battery. Wow, this is being made from the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins, and they created a new water-based fireproof battery. How cool is that? They want to make something really, really safe, but they're working in a lot of different environments, so they need to be able to make sure that it can live through those environments. Number 7, generating power on demand with hydrogen. Imagine if you could generate power on demand just using a tablet and some water. Some of these researchers are exploring applications for something that's really, really strong, and it's aluminum based. You might have aluminum in your kitchen, aluminum foil. So they can make some sort of, water-based liquid to make on-demand hydrogen-generating power. Now, hydrogen is in the air all around us. Hydrogen is in the water, H2O, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. That's why this is a water-based liquid. So just in case the batteries of their radio or flashlight die, they would be able to use this, and they can add any kind of fluid to help it work. Listen to how silly this is. All they would have to do is add a little bit of water or some fluid that contains water, such as urine. Ew. But hey, if you don't have any other materials on hand, that works too. Number 6, 3D printing ultra strong steel. I love 3D printers. I got to work a lot with 3D printers back at my old job, and the Army uses 3D printers a lot as well. So they can create any kind of metal parts, maybe things that are broken. They're also experimenting with different food-based 3D printers, so that's pretty cool. Okay, now this one is a little interesting. Number 5, human interest detector. Have you ever wanted to get inside of a soldier's head? Well, the Army researchers have developed a human interest detector that can guess where people are looking and decode their brain activity. So basically, they're looking at the electric signals in your brain. So they said that this can help the commanders understand what the people on their team are thinking and the danger that they could be in based on any decisions that are made. Number 4, AI to identify fuel-efficient materials. AI stands for artificial intelligence, kind of like a robot. And this means that they would be able to get a robot to detect what kinds of materials like soil, dirt, leaves, things like that can help them on their trip. Number 3, robotic arrays for directional communication. And this is another robot one, and it has more to do with sound frequency. So this is an idea for communication. Number 2, a self-healing material. Imagine a material that could heal itself when it was damaged. Talk about biomimicry. Now, I can think of something on our body that can heal itself, our skin. So they use skin in order to figure out how can we make a suit that if it rips, it can heal itself all over again. And number 1, soldier robot teams. Wow, can you imagine if one day our Army had troops where half of them maybe are robots and half of them are people? Then those robots could be sent into more dangerous areas so that our people could stay safe. So, that was a really cool list. I love learning about all of the advances that the Army and the other armed forces are making in the field. And I want to give another special shout out to all of those, what they call Gold Star families, families who have people abroad in the armed forces. Right now, people who are all across the world in the U.S. Army and the Navy, some of them are kind of stuck where they are because of quarantine, and that's to keep them healthy and safe. So I'm sending all of my love to those Gold Star families, and I hope that they return home soon and safely. So I hope that you have a really, really great Memorial Day. It's going to be a weird Memorial Day, certainly one that we'll never forget. We're not all going to beaches and having parties and barbecues, but I want you to remember that your grown-ups have your best interests in mind. So whatever they have planned for today, just be so happy that you get to spend it with them. So that's all I have today for the Memorial Day edition of Science Storytime. So let's end our Science Storytime with a goodbye song. So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now, until we meet again. So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now, until we meet again. It's been great to play and read together in the hive, but now it's time to say goodbye. So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now, until we meet again. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching Science Storytime with Bee. If you learned anything new today, appreciated a half an hour on your own, or you can't wait for our next edition of Science Storytime, please donate to my PayPal or my Venmo. This is not expected, but it is appreciated for this laid-off educator. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So long.